A centuries-old craft, honed and perfected through the years. A mystical process born of fire and glass.
There's something almost hypnotic about my process. That I'm basically looking at a flame. I'm manipulating the glass, and this flame in the glass is glowing. It's melting. It's very, very. It's very peculiar. There's something very, very mystical about, I think, connecting labor, your hands, and skill. I think it's spiritual.
In the hands of Paul Stankard, who describes himself as a studio glass artist, nature, myth, and beauty are encapsulated forever in glass.
The Akron Museum has always loved Paul's work. We just felt that it was the right place because we knew there was a love of Paul's work there and felt comfortable, you know, having it there and sharing it with the people of Akron and people from Cleveland. I know of going there and the surrounding areas.
You know, I look at the Akron Museum's collection and I see a journey that represents 35 years. And I see how much care I gave the earliest efforts and how they evolved into more ambitious pieces. And it's really very, very, this is an emotional component to the whole process. I mean, I'm looking at, 35 years of dedication and growth.
Paul Stankard is a person who loves learning, nature, and the outdoors.
And if you touch the pod, it explodes, expels the seed.
He was trained with a vocational skill, scientific glass blowing.
While I was working in industry, I was always, if I had free time, I was always playing, making animals and flowers and things like that. And I really enjoyed being creative with the glass. As a youngster, I had difficulty in school. I was diagnosed. I went through school as an undiagnosed dyslexic, and I was basically warehoused, which for me was a good thing because I was a daydreamer, so I could daydream in school all day long.
With no academic expectations for him after high school, Paul was steered toward learning a trade.
The program at Salem Vocational Technical School was training people for scientific glassblowing in the South Jersey industry. And so I left Salem and went to work in industry and found a way to be productive, support my family.
Paul is the soul of the earth. I mean, he is, he started in a different place than these other artists started at. He was working in a technical factory where they were making glass flasks and test tubes and all that. So he really started from the ground up and learned the trade extremely well.
I love making things, and I really loved the idea of mastering my craft, and I love challenges, and moved up the ranks to having a very desirable job. The job at Roman Haas, traveling to 3 research glass shops with my tools, allowed me to take the tools on weekends and play in my utility room.
Stankard's early efforts involved paperweights.
I've had people say, a paperweight? You make paperweights? I came from a tradition, an ongoing tradition, the paperweight tradition, which started in Europe in the mid-1800s. And although it was a very small group of makers, I built on the tradition, the French tradition, and I brought a fresh point of view to my floral paperweights. Rather than make the flowers stylized designs, little Victorian pretties, I interpreted the native flowers. I had an opportunity to take my skills working in glass and redirect it to being creative. And I started with animals, and then from animals I went to flowers, but when I think back now, I was able to improve on my floral designs, and that was wonderfully exciting. And before I thought of myself as an artist, I was interpreting, I first started with a blossom, and then the next thing you know, the blossom had a stem and some leaves, and then the blossom, the little plant had roots, and it was on and on and on, and I just invented the vocabulary for glass. And with glass, I'm interpreting nature in a very personal way.
He also found a correlation between his glass work and his study of poet Walt Whitman.
His poetry is about the ordinary, taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary. I started to become a little self-conscious about being a paperweight maker. And then I started to connect with Whitman's spirit. And I realized that if I can make a paperweight so special that people would give it serious consideration, then that's a good thing. That's a worthy challenge. Here I am, Paul Stankard, considered the world's greatest paperweight maker. Hooray! I knew that if I was going to survive as an artist craftsperson, as a paperweight maker in my utility room, I would have to make great work. I had, for 8 years, been making paperweights. I had a great year with my floral paperweights, and I thought, by God, I'm going to try to repackage my colored glass in a different form. Glass blowing, melting glass in a furnace and gathering it with a punto and blowing a bubble was the primary process for contemporary glass art. And then slowly, people like myself who were bringing alternative processes into the studio glass movement started to attract attention. My process, flame working, is about taking commercially available glass and cutting it up into small chunks, preheating it in an oven to 1,000 Fahrenheit, and taking it out of the oven hot, and then continuing to heat it into a molten state and pull it into rods. And with those rods, which I have a nice inventory of colors, I like the word menu. Isn't that neat? I have this neat menu of colors. I stand there and I just wonder what colors I'm going to use today. So I take the materials and I have a gas oxygen bench burner, and I sit at the bench burner and I just melt the glass rods in the gas oxygen flame. We're talking about 2,200 Fahrenheit, anywhere from 1,800 to 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. And with tweezers, simple tools, I shape, manipulate the rods. I'll shape them into leaves, petals, stamens. We'll do insects. You know, Jody, there's two aspects to the work. It's sitting at the bench, very small scale, sculpting out the flowers, the berries, the insects, and then the encapsulating it in the clear glass is a big effort, a lot of risk. Make sure that funnel fits into the extension real easy, okay? design, this plant. And I'm anticipating how the clear glass is going to drop onto the colored glass. So I reinforce some of the colored glass, and so that I can protect the integrity of the design. But the root systems, just add all these little tendrils on there, little rootlets, add it all together, drop the clear glass onto the colored glass, and I encapsulate the plant, glass plant. I encapsulate my colored glass designs in clear glass, but I build it on a ring, a plate that's 3 inches in diameter, and then I place a collar on that ring. I heat up my clear glass and I drop it into the collar, and that acts as a cup. And I encapsulate my colored glass, and then I can also add a second gather and build my design. I have the aptitude to work small, to work in a confined area that I focus my creative energy within that small diameter, and I can be creative. A lot of artists wouldn't be able to deal with the restraints. The restraints challenge me, and I occasionally will get a buzz when I discover a new illusion, thinking, that's never been done in glass before. Now, that's why I'm here.
The glass shines, but that is just the inherent quality of it. It's the fact that this glass, Paul's glass, encapsulates these magnificent flowers or this magnificent creation with the bees or the dragonfly or the people under the earth.
I've been exploring ways to be creative for over 40 years within these very, very defined parameters. And I know when I hit a home run. My work, I would like to think, celebrates the beauty of nature all around us.
It's like sitting in a garden and then being able to pick those beautiful flowers for later to put it in as part of a bouquet in your home. And the nice thing about this is these never die. They last a lifetime, more than a lifetime, many lifetimes. So then we move them around in the house. I mean, this may be a room where there's quite a few of Paul's works here, but we have them all through the home. So we were able to see them wherever we go.
The depth and realism of his creations in glass leave many admirers astonished.
I'm inventing a new language for glass to share or talk about nature, flowers. And so I've abstracted certain aspects. I've abstracted certain botanical characteristics and present them, and people say, wow, look at that flower. Well, it's not the way it really should be. But I'm an artist, my job is to, reinvent a flower, I guess.
Paul's journey continued to stretch the boundaries of his artistic mastery, creating complex worlds deep within his glass.
In the early beginnings, the pieces were not as dimensional as they are today. So we've gone from what he called just a regular, didn't have any term other than a paperweight, to now his orbs, which are incredible. And they came out of nowhere. So, I mean, I didn't know he was starting to do these beautiful round pieces with butterflies and bees and more magnificent bouquets.
The idea that as an adult, as a professional, I can recall my childhood memories of walking in the woods, picking blueberries, picking flowers for my mom, really inspire my work today. I want my work to be personal, and so when I would go inward and think of my childhood and think of flipping over a rock and seeing this landscape where the bugs would be scampering out of the light, and there would be tunnels, and it would be moist. And I thought, my God, I want to put as much creative energy into my root system and layer myth onto the root system as I put into the flowers. So I developed this attitude about the seen and the unseen world. And to me, the unseen world was equally as complex as the seen world. The fact that we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Root people, figures, started in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was a wonderful way to bring a human dimension to my botanicals. It was really interesting because when I would sculpt flowers, this is a wood violet, daisy, this is tea rose, people say, oh, that's nice. Oh yeah, I remember that as a child. When I incorporated the human forms into the botanical designs, what's going on in there? What are they doing? I think everybody got all excited about what I was doing. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. You know what I mean? People would accept my interpretation of a flower and say, that's wonderful. But as soon as I incorporated human forms into the design, basically into the roots, they would question that because we're all human and we can relate to the human. It would be so sweet to be in my fantasy would be to be in a person's head and experience the design the way they are experiencing it. There are days that I come in the studio, my work is my prayer. I love that attitude. The Benedictine monks have their motto, to labor is to pray. Laborare est orare. It's very sweet. And there are times when I find joy in my craft. There are times when I'm frustrated because I tried something new and lost 12 hours of labor. I accept that. I accept the failures. I learn from, we talked, as I mentioned a little earlier, I learn from my failures. That's how I grow. Without failures, the work would be stagnant.
Well, I see a genius at work. There's no question. And I look at his hands and I'm saying, well, what's this connection between this creativity in his hands and the dexterity and his brain, and how is he able to bring that brain into the finger? He's definitely, and I don't just say this, the best in the world as far as a flame worker is concerned. I mean, no one comes close.
To be a studio artist and to attract the attention of collectors, and especially Mike and Annie Belkin, what a beautiful situation.
Well, I know without Paul, I would never have started collecting contemporary glass. First of all, it's a very, very important part of my life today, and it has been for over 30 years. I look at it every single day. I see Paul in the work every day, and he's just been a genuine friend of mine. This is a piece that I don't think to this day Paul remembers making this. I pick up the pieces, Annie picks up the pieces, and we look at it and we discover something new in the piece. And oh my God, I never saw this before. And we'll do that quite often. And I'll call Paul, and Paul, I didn't know you had that in that botanical or that. I mean, it's amazing. I never asked Paul to make a particular piece for me. Whatever was made, and he felt that was the right thing for our collection, is what he sent. And we built a collection that way. It was never, oh, I saw a wonderful this, and can you make me one of these? It was totally, it's his collection as much as it is ours.
64 pieces of the Belkin's collection now belong to the Akron Art Museum.
The museum came into our home, and we let them have carte blanche, other than some personal pieces which had inscriptions on it, where personal things that we wanted to keep for the time being. It wasn't a feeling of loss, fortunately, because we had quite a few other ones, and we were able to still enjoy those. But it was, the feeling of giving was much stronger than the feeling of missing. Part of your life is sharing, whether it be your artwork, or whether it be your heart, or whether it be money, or whether it's if you have the ability, and everybody can share something. It's giving. It's part of you helping. It's part of you sharing with the rest of the world.
I'm glad that the Akron Art Museum has my best work in their collection. Because of Mike and Annie's enthusiasm for my work, and because of their the friendship, I was very selective about what I sent them. And Mike had never had anything negative to say. He's always appreciative. And so that kind of reinforces this idea that the Belkin's collection is special. And I wanted it to be special because they're special.
Paul's Stankard Glass opened as a permanent exhibit in late 2011. That opening was when Mike and Annie Belkin saw the work they had donated for the first time.
I was at a loss for words. Really, I didn't know what to say when I saw the display cases with his work in it, and it just it took my breath away and brought tears to my eyes. But it was a wonderful feeling. It really was, to be able to honor him that way.
Well, you look at the Akron collection, you're looking at basically probably 35 to 40 years of evolution, and that work is going to, you eventually, the viewer, I would hope, when a viewer looks at how the work has evolved at the Akron Art Museum, they're going to see discoveries and complexity, and they're going to see visual information that is going to open up their eyes, hopefully, to what I'm about. My work is about delicacy, and it's about, and that's a strange word, but for me, delicacy is about detail. And I love crafting the glass with, I really care about doing it well. And I think that this idea of making things well is my prayer. That's the spiritual. I'm trying to do my very, very best, and that's my prayer.